Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Today we are playing a Turbrodepths deck. So if you're not familiar with that, it's Dark Depths is our only way of winning the game. This makes it 2020 if it has no counters on it. So we either remove them with Hexmage or we copy it with Thespian stage and then the copy doesn't have any counters and that makes it 2020. We have a bunch of ways of protecting it via hand disruption, Pithing Needles for Wastelands and Caracas, and Not of This World to protect it from removal. Bunch of tutors in the form of crop rotation, Sylvan Scrying, bunch of fast mana and Lotus Petals and Exploration, and a few silver bullets in the land. Now, if you've been watching my channel, you'll know that I'm generally a green-black Turbrodepths player, but today we are trying out some rainbow mana base, but still in the same spell shell as the green-black deck that I like to play. Now, the reason we're doing this is we just want to try and make our deck as consistent and reliable as possible. Now, rainbow mana base means that, yes, you're more susceptible to things like Blood Moon and Wasteland. However, it means that we are more able to cast our spells. You know, we have green pips into black, and sometimes when you're running on basics, that isn't always a thing that you get to do if you're fetching out your basic early or you just happen to draw one or two basics in the green-black build. So we're just going to see what the most consistent build we can do to do our thing. Now, our spell base is the same. We're still running this new package that I've been liking with the 3 explorations and 2 life from the Loam in the main deck. So exploration, if you play this on turn 1, it effectively ramps you 2 mana or 2 land drops by turn 2, which is really clutch for the amount of mana that our combo actually needs in terms of this and activating it. And if we don't have an Urborg or a Yavimaya, then we need the 2 lands, so that gets us there. And if we do have this gives us 1 mana left over for protection. So that's kind of the plan here. Also allows us to go turn 1, play exploration, play a land, Thoughtseize our opponent, something like that. So it opens up much stronger lines, and then obviously in the late game you can just keep recurring your combo and deploying it every turn until it's good enough, which is how I found we can actually punch through and beat some control decks that were quite difficult to beat with other builds. Now you might be thinking, oh, life from the Loam, we don't really have much we can fetch back because none of these are going to the graveyard on their own. But that's not the point. This is a later game card that we have for recurring our combo after the first hit. That's why there's only 2 of them in the main deck. Our list also has 2 Boseijus, which is something that I've been running lately anyway, because we want to go up slightly on land for the purposes of exploration. But this also gives us an answer, which kind of covers one of our bases with our weakness to Blood Moon a little bit more with this build, because now we have at least one answer here in our deck that we can cast off of a petal or we can float some mana sort of thing. So we do have some answers to Blood Moon in the main deck as well, which kind of covers us out of the sideboard. Now, speaking of the sideboard, there's some interesting stuff here that I think you'll want to hear about. So we got the normal stuff. So we got our Null Rod, our Collector Ouphe, the other Not of This World, 1 more life from the Loam for those grindy matchups, Graveyard Hate and Sejiri Extraction. And we have Inquisition of Kozilek instead of Duress. Now this is because we can't reliably cast an Abrupt Decay in our deck, right? Post Blood Moon. So what we need is another answer that can hit Magus and Blood Moon in our sideboard for our discard. Also, this hits Brazen Borrower, which has kind of become the default way that a lot of tempo decks are trying to deal with a resolved Marit Lage. So Inquisition is just better than Duress for quite a lot of matchups right now, and especially since we're slightly colder to Blood Moon, this is just an edge towards that. And then this is the weird one. 4 Sudden Shocks. So instead of playing the Abrupt Decay, we're running 4 Sudden Shocks. So this is an answer, a very clean answer to Magus of the Moon. What this does is stops decks like Show and Tell from being able to play a Magus and protect it, because they can't counterspell our Sudden Shocks. This just gets rid of it 100%, no questions asked. And we've got 8 lands that can tap for any colour as well as 4 petals. So this is also something that we can cast against like scam style decks that sometimes board in things like Opposition Agent. So this gets rid of Magus of the Moon and Opposition Agent. And Magus of the Moon sees more play than Blood Moon. So this is why we're running the Sudden Shock, because you can always cast it underneath a Blood Moon. It's kind of interesting tech that I've been a big fan of when I've been playing Rainbow Depths. I think a lot of people just end up filling their sideboard with the stuff that you see in a green-black sideboard and not really leveraging their Rainbow mana base. Now, we're not really leveraging it that much. We've just got Sudden Shock. We haven't got things like Deafening Silence or Flusterstorm in our sideboard. What I want to do is just see how this mana base works with the core of our deck. But because Abrupt Decay isn't a solid enough answer anymore when we're running this mana base for the Blood Moons, That's why we got the Sudden Shock. So once I've experimented with this list, then we can see about adding in some sideboard cards, see how reliable our mana feels, if we want to try and cast some like blue spells or white spells. What I would do if I wanted to up the count, I would probably cut a Yavimaya for a City of Brass. That's probably where I would go to get the 9th source in our lands to help us cast these spells. Alright, that's it for the deck tech. Quite a lot today because we're trying out some interesting things, we're doing some experimenting. You shouldn't just play the same list all the time. If you're in an archetype, you need to keep innovating and seeing. Like the recent innovation of Exploration was very good, so now we're going to try this and see if this makes us just slightly more reliable, because we really need to nail as many game ones as possible. So yeah. Alright, remember to like and subscribe, and if you're interested in the minutiae of this deck, I do have a Patreon where every month I do an updated version of Turbrodepths, and I discuss the current meta and things, and it's obviously just got a primer about all the card choices and things. And I think the next edition of that's going to be quite updated because I'm going to morph it into a whole thing about Turbrodepths in general rather than just green-black Turbrodepths. It's going to have a lot more content on it. And I also do a article every month about, usually about some sort of Dark Depths deck. So if that's something that interests you, by all means, have a look at that. The link is in the description, and I'm going to stop talking and start playing some Legacy. If you're looking to play Legacy on MTGO like me, why not try Card Hoarder? They're a rental service that I personally use, and I found them better than other rental services that I've used in the past. So why not give them a try? We're on the play for round 1. What does our hand look like? It's going to need a little bit of help. I don't think we can keep this one. What does this hand do? This does not have access to a Dark Depths. Normally I would not keep a hand with Turbrodepths that doesn't have access to Dark Depths. The other pieces are easier to find, so you can try and draw into them, but Dark Depths itself is a thing that we can't win the game without, so we do need to have access to that in our opening hand. This eventually has access, but not really feeling this one either. Yikes. Do we go to 3 here? Our opponent has also mulliganed a whole bunch there. Because they've mulliganed so much, I think we can probably keep this one and just rely on some hand disruption here. So we've got Thoughtseize, we're going to need that. We're going to need this Duress, we're going to want this Dark Depths, we're going to want this Gemstone Mine. So I guess we're putting these 3 back. We're on the play, so we do get to Thoughtseize our opponent straight up. And they've mulliganed to 3 cards now. They might just scoop to a discard spell, to be honest. But because we've mulliganed to 4, maybe they won't. We'll see. Trying to think what decks would mulligan this low. Probably something with an Echo of Eon's Plan in it. We'll fire off this Thoughtseize first, because this can hit anything. Undercity Informer. That's what our opponent is on, I see. Interesting. I think we take the Undercity Informer. That seems like a... Now, we can get slightly punished from taking the Undercity Informer if they draw a Reanimate. They sometimes have one in their deck, but they're only on a 60 card list, which means they don't always have one. Alright, what have they drawn? Alright, they just immediately drew another one. Okay. I don't believe we can beat this unless we can remove their land with a Ghost Quarter. Sylvan Scrying, that doesn't do it. Alright. We just concede the game. They're just going to do their combo. I guess I should have let them show us their deck, really. Okay, so 3 surgical extractions, please. The Null Rods are useful here too, as is the Collector Ouphe. This is not going to be a game where we're going to be life from loaming our opponent. Inquisition of Kozilek, also pretty useful. We will not need to protect our creature. That leaves us with 4 cards. Sejiri Steppe is not going to do anything in this matchup. Bojuka Bog will do stuff in this matchup if we can get it off. Crop rotation. Pithing Needle is not that exciting to me. We can shut off one of their things, but it's not incredible. Ghost Quarter is very good here. Duress is good. Maybe it's the Exploration that goes here, because the Exploration doesn't help us play turn 1 Collector Ouphe or Null Rod, whereas the Lotus Petals do. Now, yes, it will shut us our Lotus Petals, but it shuts off most of our opponent's mana, so I think that's worth doing. Alright, this is what we're going with. I expect to lose this matchup. If this is a matchup you expect a lot of, you can run ley lines in your sideboard. But it's a relatively niche deck. You do see it every now and then. Like, it's not something you shouldn't be at least aware of going into playing Legacy. But it's below 1% of the meta. But then again, so are most decks in Legacy because it's such a wide format right now. Like the highest represented deck right now, I think, is like 9% or like 9.5%. And there's only 4 decks, I think, that are above 5% in the meta right now. That just shows you how wide open Legacy is and how awesome a format is. Alright, we're on the play. What does our hand do? We have Bojuka Bog in hand, which is really not what we wanted. We have no hand. I think we have to send this one. Okay, so now we have access to Bojuka Bog. We also have turn 2 kill if we want it. We will keep this. And Boseiju is good if they do like a pass the turn and play a land out. So I don't really want to get rid of that one. I don't think we need the Thespian stage because we're going to try and win off of our Hexmage. The other option here is to get rid of the Lotus Petal. Sure, we'll get rid of the Lotus Petal. This means we're slightly more durable against a discard spell if our opponent is on that sort of plan. Let's play out the Mana Confluence. We have Bojuka Bog if our opponent goes for it. That's only 1 layer of interaction. They kept to 7, so they should be able to beat 1 layer of interaction. Alright, Academe. We do not have any interaction with this. Tune Spirit Guy goes underneath it. A Lotus Petal. So they should have 2 cards left in hand after they combo. Which could very easily be some disruption either for our hand or for our spells on the stack. Things like Pact of Negation. 2 mana. Is this Cabal Ritual? A Balustrade Spike. They have 1 card in hand. Let's see what that 1 card is. Let's see. 1 Pact of Negation, 2 Pact of Negation, 3 Pact of Negation, 4 Pact of Negation. So they have no Pact of Negation if I can count properly. Okay, let's just go for it here. They have Memory's Journey. Do they have Memory's Journey? It's pretty standard in these builds, but no, I don't think they have it in there. Let's exile their graveyard. Alright. So that's a matchup where, in theory, we don't need a win condition. As weird as that sounds. So we need to mulligan to Surgical Extraction to win this game. Our opponent will try and win the game on turn 1. Our hand will lose to a turn 1 combo. It's reasonable if our opponent mulligans slow, but I think we just need to... Alright, this doesn't do anything either. This is a weird matchup where we're not actually looking for the Dark Depths. We're just trying to stop our opponent from comboing us. Oh, their opponent's multi 5, which helps us out. But we still haven't found one of our 3 surgicals yet. Such a weird polarizing matchup, Ouphe spells. So my metric about always keeping a hand with Dark Depths doesn't really hold true for this matchup. We just have to keep going because they can kill us turn 1. Alright, so we'll keep this. We've mulled to 1 and it's just a Surgical Extraction here. It'd be very funny if our opponent Thoughtseize us and we lost. Lion's Eye Diamond. Okay, so they've morphed into a Belcher deck, so our Surgical Extraction won't do anything and they're just going to have us stone cold dead. Unless we can find any mana source and then name Belcher. But we could die this turn quite easily. Can we find a land before they find Belcher? Or the mana to cast Belcher? Another Surgical Extraction. Well, we've got the graveyard covered at least. So the only reason you'd run Lion's Eye Diamond is purely for Belcher here, because it doesn't really help you cast any other things. Alright, we've gone through another turn. Can I please draw a land? Null Rod's very good, but we need some land here. What a ridiculous game this is. That's kind of what Ouphe spells does to you. Like with the hand they've shown us, we could have easily kept one of the earlier ones, but the problem is we don't know if we get to do that. Well, we found a land, I suppose. I guess we'll play it. I think we've given our opponent far too much time here. That wasn't necessarily our choice. We just had to mulligan to find some interaction in this matchup. A Lotus Petal. A Chrome Mox. I think our opponent's going and they're going to Charbelcher us here. 1, 2, 3 mana. Another Lion's Eye Diamond. They could have gone into a Beseech strategy here. Feels like that might be what's happening. Yeah, oh, okay, just have a Charbelcher. And then they just get to blow us up here. Yeah, pretty difficult matchup, this one. And, like, if you want ley lines, they help here, but the Charbelcher pivot is very good. Now, we're boarding in stuff like Null Rod anyway. But if we'd have kept, like, one of our earlier hands, it could just make a turn to Collector Ouphe. Then we win this matchup. But that's the problem with this deck. If you assume they're just going to do a Charbelcher pivot, then you get blown out by their graveyard thing. You kind of need it all. And the thing that kills you on turn 1 is the graveyard thing. So maybe we mulligan too aggressively. But if we drew a land at any point in the first 4 turns, then we would have won this game. Weirdly. Alright. Let's go to round 2. Alright, our opening hand for round 2 does not have access to... Well, it does have access to a Marit Lage eventually. But it's going to take a while, so we're going to mulligan this. This has turn 3 kill with a Duress. So we'll keep this. And we'll throw back... We can probably throw back a Confluence here. We're more likely to draw land. I'd rather keep these bits of tutoring, because that might be more useful for us. Alright, our opponent's starting with a polluted delta. This could be like a scam type list. Okay, Death Shadow. That's what the Watery Grave is telling me. We're getting Thoughtseize. We're going to lose... Interesting. It might be the Sylvan Scrying or the Duress. If they have no counter spells, they will take the crop rotation. Unless they think that we won't just crop rotate into them. Crop rotation is the most powerful card in our hand, unless the Duress is going to be really good for some reason. We'll play out the Urborg first, I believe, because that gives us access to the Hexmage on the following turn. And just fire off this Duress. I guess the reason for not doing that would be a Wasteland on our Mana Confluence would be... on our Urborg would be really awkward, because then we'll only have 1 mana available. So there's a lot of lines of how this game can pan out depending on what they take here and what they have in hand. They've gone for the crop rotation. That tells me they don't have a counterspell. Another crop rotation. Interesting. Are we supposed to do Mana Confluence? I guess we won't have 2 mana anyway. Oh yeah, I think it's just Urborg and Duress our opponent. Like, it's the difference between expending our green source or expending the thing that turns Dark Depths into a mana-producing land. Oh, they did have a counterspell. Interesting. I'll not pay for this, days. So next turn, if we don't get Wastelanded, then we can play out Mana Confluence and Sylvan Scrying. Watery Grave pass from our opponent is interesting. This feels like maybe a Swamp Cycle. We could play around Daze or we could just Sylvan Scrying. If our opponent wants to Daze this and they pick up their land, I don't really mind. That sets them back from doing anything else. Let's Sylvan Scrying. A Brainstorm is their response. Can we Sylvan Scrying? Okay, so we're going to go get ourselves a Thespian stage. So we're getting close to being able to combo off here. If we'd have had our old build with the straight green-black, this Mana Confluence could have been a basic swamp, which would have been a disaster and made the hand unplayable. A grief. So we're going to lose the crop rotation or the Pithing Needle here, but we don't need either of those to win the game, unless they have a Wasteland. I guess this will tell us what they have. Although, if they try and Wasteland... Right, they've gone for the Pithing Needle. If they try and Wasteland, we will have a crop rotation to then crop rotate away the thing they try to Wasteland. Although they might just be reanimating the grief here. Yep, here it comes. This also puts them into decent Death Shadow range as well. No. Okay, so they didn't have a Wasteland to follow up with there. Let's play out our Thespian stage. We'll hold back our Dark Depths because if we just hang that out, it's more likely to get removed. An awkward time. And this way we can still draw into Hexmage and play that first and then play our Dark Depths with 2 ways of making it so they can't beat us unless they have 2 Wastelands in play. We can also tap our Mana Confluence without taking damage because it's a swamp. Which is pretty cool. There's the Wasteland. Let's see what they opt for here. No cracking of the Wasteland now, that seems fair. We don't have any basics in play on either side, so we can't copy a basic in response to a Wasteland on our Thespian stage. An Exploration, you say? So if we tap to put this Exploration into play, it does take us a turn out of this game. Which I don't think is where I want to be right now. It does make Life and Loam a much better draw if we play it right now, though. Is that 1 turn going to be the difference? I think so. So now we're in a situation where if this Gemstone Mine was one of the basics in our deck which got cut for it, then we could have something to turn our Thespian stage into, but they're never going to drop this Wasteland. So, alright. So now they've got 7 power, 11 power. So if they have any way of hurting themselves at all, they'll be able to kill us next turn. So they're going to put us to 13 here. Alright, we have to beat this Wasteland. Pithing Needle is a good draw. Think about Wastelanding us in the upkeep here. If they do, then Vampire Hexmage is obviously a good draw. And they can't force a will us taking any days because they don't have any. Right, crop rotation. How does crop rotation help us out here? It does help us out. That's what it does. So play this. We can crop rotate for a Ghost Quarter our opponent's Wasteland, and then make our guy. That seems strong. Our opponent has one card in hand here. I think we will crop rotate away our Gemstone Mine here. We might have just about found a way through this game. So this goes and gets us our little Ghost Quarter. And then I think in our opponent's upkeep we make the 20/20. Now we can dodge a second Wasteland. So if they fire off this Wasteland now, we make a 20/20. If they don't, then we also make a 20/20. Alright, so we found a way through. Our opponent probably has a basic. No basic at all. Interesting. So they're not running land cyclers, that's what that tells me. There's no troll in their deck. They have the Brazen Borrower though. So that's pretty bad news for us. Imagine if the last card I had was not of this world. I don't think we can win this game. We found a way through, but they had to have the one of Brazen Borrower, and they did, so fair enough. So, for this matchup, what do we like? Opposition Agent is a thing they might have, which can sometimes make us want the Inquisition. Inquisition also takes out the Borrower, whereas Duresses don't. So this is something I'm interested in. They're a Wasteland deck, so Life from the Loam is not unhelpful. Pithing Needle, obviously, for Wasteland is pretty strong. We're never fetching the Bojuka Bog against this matchup, really. I just don't think that's where you want to be here. So I think we can trim on that. The Not of This World seem less exciting than Discard to me, so we'll trim 2 of those. And our way of playing through their multiple Wastelands and removal is via the Life from the Loam for the main part. And I think this is fine. What does this hand do? Alright, we Thoughtseize into... do we Thoughtseize or do we... I think we Pithing Needle first, actually. Whilst they don't have Daze mana up. We'll play out our Lotus Petal as well. We could do both, but we need this Lotus Petal for green mana here. I could Force of Will this. Wasteland. Alright. So next turn we Sylvan Scrying for the Thespian stage, and then we can combo without worrying about things. One thing that is a little bit annoying for us here is well, it's not that annoying, but we can't Ghost Quarter ourselves for a green source, which is something you sometimes do. Right, Thoughtseizing us, this probably takes the Sylvan Scrying. But we have a lot of ways of making our combo. So we have 3 Sylvan Scrying, 4 Crop Rotation, 4 Hexmage, 4 Thespian Stage. So that's 15 cards. So more than 1 in 4. Another Urborg. Interesting. I kind of want to just strip mine our opponent here, because they're not really going to remove the Pithing Needle very easily. And they've shown us they don't have any basics. So let's just attack them that way. We don't want to fire off the Thoughtseize, you'd rather fire it off later. They didn't show us a basic in game 1. If they do have a basic here, then it means they had one in hand. They did have a basic. Interesting. Okay, that's kind of annoying then. Interesting they didn't show it to us in the first game. Maybe they just thought they didn't need it, so they didn't want us to have that information so that we'd make a play like this. That's quite an interesting move. Either that or it was in their hands. Those are the 2 options. Sure, ponder. So we're saving the Thoughtseize for when we're getting closer to combo, so we're more likely to hit a piece that disrupts us, because our opponent's going to be digging for it, pondering, having a look to see if they can find a borrower or something for a bit of insurance, and we may as well save this till when we're actually getting ready to go off. Because otherwise we fire it off now and they just resculpt for something else. Also, we can use it to punch a hole through counter magic to try and deploy a tutor effect. Watery Grave. We're going to see here a Thoughtseize. So we're going to lose our Thoughtseize. So this is the downside of keeping this in hand, unfortunately. Our Urborg does help our opponent out as well. Okay, so we found a Thespian stage as well. Right, we'll play this Dark Depths that they know about. And then next turn we'll jam the stage and we'll try and kill our opponent that way. I'd love to find a piece of discard next turn. A Thoughtseize would be real good, because we can Thoughtseize and deploy our combo in the same turn. Alright, a Wasteland. They need a Brazen Borrower for this to do anything. If they borrow our Pithing Needle, then they can't borrow our Marit Lage later. Murktide Regent. 2020 Indestructible is bigger than 6/6 Flyer, so that's good to know. Thoughtseize. Okay, one away, I'll take it though. So play this out. We Duress our, we Inquisition our opponent here. Let's see what they have. This can take a Borrower, which is why we're playing the Inquisition. I think we'd probably still board in. Would we board it? I don't know. Not sure we would board in the Duresses in this matchup. Reanimate, Grief, Surgical Extraction. None of these do anything really. I guess we take the Surgical Extraction in case something goes wrong. So if we don't make our 2020 now, we can definitely get jammed up if they draw a Borrower, because they have double Wasteland, so we can't really activate in response, so we're just going to make our thing now. Alright, we got the biggest game in town. Our opponent is drawing off the top. They shuffled after their Ponder, so they are drawing random cards here. Alright, so they drew a Brainstorm. That's a pretty good way to try and find an answer. Unless they found a fetch, they should know if they're dead or not. Alright, they just found the Borrower. Alright. That's pretty bad news for us. Alright, they've only seen a quarter of their deck and they found what might be a 2 of post-board. It's statistically unlikely, but very sad. We don't get to cast any more spells, and we're probably going to lose this game in a couple of turns. But it's not going to take long, so might as well play it out. Trying to think what we can have here. If we draw runner of Hexmage and Depths, or Hexmage Green Source. Okay, we can't do that now because of the crop rotation. If we draw Hexmage and Depths in the next 2 turns, then we still lose to the Grief, I think. Yeah, we're still going to lose to the Grief there. Not sure how we're supposed to win this one then. Yep. Okay, we're just done. Alright, we kind of got bodied a bit there, unfortunately. Sometimes they will have the Borrowers, and we won't have the protection. They were drawing off the top, but they had a Brainstorm that hit into it, so statistically against us, but that's a game with Magic sometimes. Sometimes you'll be on the wrong side of variance and it'll feel horrible. Sometimes you'll be on the right side and it'll feel great. And if you play enough Magic, it evens out. So let's go round 3. Alright, this is our hand. We have turn 1 Thoughtseize, turn 2 Sylvan Scrying for Dark Depths, turn 3 make a 2020. I'm certainly in the market for that one. Let's see if we're punished or not. A Misty Rainforest from our opponent, so they could Brainstorm in response to our Thoughtseize to hide something good. They won't necessarily know what they're hiding. Not of this world. Pretty happy to see that one. That gives us a little bit of wiggle room against some removal. That's what our opponent's working with. If they do have to Brainstorm now, they do get Protect a card from their hand, but they don't get to use it to fix their hand. So depending on what they were planning on doing with their Brainstorm. Oh, okay, not a Brainstorm, a buy. This is going to be a Veil of Summer. Sad face. That means our opponent's probably on Storm, which is an okay-ish matchup. Like, they should win game 1 most of the time. But game 2 and 3, we have a lot of hate for them. Especially now the Beseech decks are more susceptible to graveyard hate than Storm used to be. Lotus Petal. Are they playing out to dodge discard, or are they going to kill us this turn? A Thoughtseize. So we don't need this Not of This World, but they will take our Sylvan Scrying. Right, there it goes. Alright, this wasn't a setup turn, this was just a go turn. Alright. Just get some information before we lose the game, I suppose. Oh, it's a Doomsday deck. Okay, that's a different kettle of fish. This means that the way we win this game is to Ghost Quarter our opponent's land and hope that that means they can't win the game. Now, they have 1 blue mana and 1 black mana floating, which means they could just win the game this turn. If they have any cantrip in their hands, they should be able to win the game. And I know it's pretty much a free roll as well, because we have nothing in our hand that does so. Yikes. Feels like it's going to be a brutal league today. Right, let's see their exile pile. Veil of Summer. They got an Uro in there, which is a little bit unusual. But nothing else surprising me there. Patch of Negation, yeah. Free piece of protection when you're trying to combo off. Main deck Surgical Extraction. That is unusual. Just as a one-of, I guess as part of a protection package, you can use that to mess with people. They're on an Ideas Unbound pile as well. Or not a pile, but on a build. I can't see a Lion's Eye Diamond in there, which means I think they're going to kill us this turn. Because Lion's Eye Diamond allows you to cantrip into it. So if they have something like a Brainstorm here, they can Brainstorm into it. We can probably work out if they have a Brainstorm, we just have to count it, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I don't have a Brainstorm. So maybe we get one turn here, and then we can try and Ghost Quarter our opponent and ruin their day. If we take out their blue source, they might be unable to cast Thassa's Oracle. So we're looking for a 5 outer here to try and win the game. And it might still not be good enough. I'm spending more time choosing the order of their cards than they did making their pile, which is interesting. Doomsday is quite a challenging deck to play. Alright, so I had a Street Wraith. That cycles them into Consider, probably. No, Predict. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yep, so they're going to predict away where the top card is, draw 2 more cards, so they have Lion's Eye Diamond, Thassa's Oracle, and a cantrip. No, that's 3 cards, right? So they've got 2 cards in hand here. How do they... So they have the Lion's Eye Diamond. Oh yes, they just have a cantrip, right? And then they cantrip, crack the Lion's Eye Diamond for triple blue, make Thassa's Oracle. Yeah, that works. Wait, they're passing the turn. So we could win if we had that, but we do not have it. Our opponents should be able to win the game here. They have blue and blue. There's no way we can interact with this at all. Let's make sure they've assembled their pile correctly. We did have a line to win that game, though. So, this matchup. I like Surgical Extraction and Inquisition. I don't really want the artifact hate here. I don't think it's where I want to be. Not This World is sometimes playable. I don't think this is a matchup where Pithing Needle particularly shines. Bojuka Bog is good for their Uro, but that's not really what we're into right now. Ghost Quarter is very good in this matchup. It actually allows us to do stuff. Same with Boseiju. Sometimes lets us beat their piles. I don't think we're going to be life in the loaming, so we might as well have another Null Rod. Not This World. And yeah, I think this is probably where we're at here. We could trim out this Life from the Loam just so we have a Bojuka Bog in our deck. I don't know. Like, it helps against Uro, but it's also just another land that we get to sacrifice to things. So what does our hand do? It gets there, it has a little bit of disruption, it has a protection. Is this going to be acceptable? It's a bit slow. It's what, turn 3 kill? Turn 3 2020? I think we can keep this though. Mulligan 6 cards. We do need to do the slightly risky play. Well, actually, no. Our opponent's mulligan to 5. We don't have any black mana immediately available, which is the one thing that concerns me with this hand. We don't have the Inquisition to go, but we have a clock. So we could crop rotate here for Urborg, but then we lose our ability to assemble both of our lands here. So that's not what I'm about. Play strand from our opponents. Do they mulligan to a 5-card hand that just wins the game? A Ponder, sure. So if they have anything good, they'll leave it on top so we can't mess with it. We do have a Boseiju though, which can beat them after they've made a pile if they're not expecting us to have land destruction. But if they Thoughtseize us and see it, then they'll know that they can... what they have to play around. Which is the thing with Doomsday. Doomsday can basically beat a lot of, like, most lines. But it has to know what those lines are sometimes. So, let's see how we do. Thoughtseize. I really want to go and get a... I think we're just supposed to Sylvan Scrying here. Just do our thing. I hope he gets there while our opponent's fishing for their pieces on their mulligan. Well, if they counterspell this, it sets them back a pretty reasonable amount. Force of Will. Alright, that's 2 cards gone. We have 2 forms of land destruction. Now, our opponent doesn't know that we have 2. We do need another land to play this Boseiju, though. So if they make a pile, we can strip away 2 of their lands. But they'll probably just make a pile that wins with LED. Alright, so we're going to lose our crop rotation here. So now we're very far away from comboing. If this Yavimaya was the City of Brass, which I mentioned would be the one to get the 9th source, then we would be in a better spot right now because we would have been able to Thoughtseize our opponent and stuff. Our opponent's got 2 cards in hand. Thespian's Stage. So we have access to black mana now. We can copy their Underground Sea to give us access to Thoughtseize next turn. But we don't want to do that until we know what our opponent's turn is, because we might need to do some Boseiju and Ghost Quarter shenanigans. We'd also copy the Ghost Quarter and just try and rinse through all of their lands. I'm not convinced that's a great strategy. Right, let's get ourselves an Underground Sea / Thespian Stage. So now we can frozen discard our opponent. Alright. We'll try out a Thoughtseize here. Our opponent does have green mana though. Alright, they didn't have it there. Interesting. Ideas Unbound is a thing that can let them win the game. Do we want to do anything else here? We can't. We have to decide if we want to play this Boseiju or hold it. I think holding it is slightly better right now. We're going to get Thoughtseize here. That's fine. I don't think it's worth using the Sejiri Extraction or anything over there, because then they just take another card, and the card we removed isn't something I'm that bothered about removing any of those. Alright, so we knew what their draw for turn was, and it was a Tropical Island. A Dark Depths. There we go. If we Inquisition now, we take their Cabal Ritual. What does that do for us? Not a lot. And takes us off of our Thespian Stage, so it's not worth doing. See if we can 20-20 our opponent. A Duress. Sure, our opponent is deterministically dead. Unless we misclick. Which has happened before, so... Alright. Because the only card they have in hand is Cabal Ritual. Alright, our opponent scoops it up. Do you want to do anything differently? No, I think I quite like where we're at there. I don't think this is a game where we have the time to do Life from the Loam. Maybe 1 Life from the Loam over a Bojuka Bog. Just in case we get into some sort of weird matchup where we're trying to just Ghost Quarter them out. Which is a possibility. We have discard. We have a turn 3 2020 and discard. I think we have to keep that. If our opponent turn 1s us, then they turn 1 us. Our opponent is down to 5 cards already, so this bodes well for us. We need a little bit of help in matchups like this where our interaction kind of has to come on our turn. It's not like a Storm deck where we at least have Surgicals which can do something, like stopping Beseech lines. We just don't have any interaction on turn 0. So if they get us, they get us. So they're quite clearly displaying... Yeah, this is quite an obvious Veil of Summer. Are we supposed to play into it, or are we just supposed to try and burn it away from our opponent? Because our mana's spoken for next turn. Let's let them draw a card, I guess. They should be veiling here. But if they don't have the veil, this is like backbreaking. Yeah. So I think it's worth doing just in case they don't have the veil. They did mulligan pretty low. And we have another Thoughtseize we might want to fire off soon. If we find a Lotus Petal or something, we can do that next turn. If we find an Exploration... That's not really going to change the mass on that one. There's a Ponder. If they shuffle, then Thoughtseize becomes slightly stronger here. But if they leave it on top, then it means that they've just buried the card that we want to discard. They did not shuffle their library, so that's kind of awkward for us. Not of this world. So we definitely have some choices to make here. Do you think our opponent's going to kill us next turn? I think we have to Thoughtseize here. Personal Tutor. Brainstorm, Force of Will. How defensive are we going to be here? We can take the Force of Will, but then we'll die to the Brainstorm on the turn after. I think we have to take the Tutor. But I think they might just have what they need on top. Right, let's put out the Thespian Stage here. So we can fire off a Sylvan Scrying next turn, which they will Force of Will, which will at least take the Brainstorm out of their hand, which is a thing that can let them to win the game the turn they combo. They have to have put the good thing on top there. So shuffling. Getting another Underground Sea. I think we're going to see a Doomsday cast this time. Oh, just another personal tutor. Interesting. So we have the crop rotation here. We're not really able to use it that effectively. So we Sylvan Scrying here, and they counterspell it. They might not counterspell it, to be honest. They might be more concerned about what we're going to crop rotate for. No, they did this. They did do this. All right. So our opponent's going to have to do a pass a turn line with their Doomsday, and we get to try and make a 20/20, which might not be good enough, or we can try and Ghost Quarter them off of blue mana. But they've already seen the Ghost Quarter, so it's quite likely they have an answer for that. The best draw, I think, in our entire deck is a... Actually, no, it's fine, right? We get to do both here. Because we play the Gemstone Mine, that becomes the Dark Depths, and then the other crop rotation becomes the Ghost Quarter. So we have a line. Doesn't feel like the best line, but puts our opponent dead if they don't win next turn, and we maybe slow them down a turn by Ghost Quartering. We already have our creature covered if they've gone for some sort of creature removal package, like a Borrower, or like Chain of Vapor or whatever. So our chances are reasonable, I would say. Also, the reason we cast the Sylvan Scrying there is you always cast the Sylvan Scrying first against counterspell decks, because it's just a 1-for-1 or a 2-for-1 in our favour if they're using a force. Whereas the crop rotation gets counterspelled, it feels real bad. But we can't sideboard crop rotations out against blue decks because they're such an integral part of how our deck functions. Alright, our opponent's finished doing their pile. There's no basic in it. Is the Lion's Eye Diamond. The Lion's Eye Diamond is not in the pile. That's really interesting. So I think our line actually works here. We play out Gemstone Mine. This Gemstone Mine becomes, whilst our opponent has no mana, this becomes a Ghost Quarter. And then we Ghost Quarter away one of their lands. They don't have to shuffle the pile, so they might have planned for this already. We don't have a second one to fetch, but we do have a Dark Depths. Alright, our opponent has to kill us on this turn. I could spend some time trying to work out what our opponent's pile is, but I'm not going to. Okay, they're just passing. We have protection if they have any sort of bounce spell here. I think we might have done it. We have lots of protection. Excellent. I'll be honest, the amount of games we win purely because we have a Ghost Quarter in our deck is surprisingly high. And hopefully we're going to get a nice old bordered one in Ravnica Remastered. That's the dream at least. Anyway, let's go to round 4. We are now 1 and 2. Right, our opening hand for round 4 does not do anything. What about this one? What does this allow us to do? It's pretty close to getting us where we need to be. It's not very fast though, is it? We will need a second green source. So I guess we have both of these green sources. Alright, I'm going to try this one. One of these cards has got to go. I think it's the Exploration here. We have 2 lands in hand right now. So our plan is turn 1, Thoughtseize, turn 2, Bojuka Bog, Lotus Petal. Well, actually, no, we'll play Lotus Petal on turn 1 as well, in case we need to crop rotate in response to Wasteland or something. And then we have ways of finding our 2 things. We just need a bit more land to get there, and we need our crop rotations to resolve, which is another problem. But we'll cross the bridges when we get to them. Sylvan Scrying, okay. Play this. We'll play out this so we can play around a daze. I'm expecting a Thoughtseize, a daze or a brainstorm from our... Sorry, I'm expecting a daze, a brainstorm, and we've played around the daze. Sorry. Too many thoughts in my head at once there. Okay, our opponent's doing this, are they? How do we beat this? If we take the Elvish Spirit Guide, that buys us 1 more turn. That's probably the best way of doing this. They don't have any counter spells at present. I still don't think we crop rotate right now. We need to draw some more lands, and then we can decide what we're doing with our crop rotations. Our opponent didn't cycle their Lorien Revealed, which is interesting. I think they're just keeping it as a blue card for potential Force of Wills. Like Mana Confluence, Lotus Petal. That means your opponent isn't doing something very fair. Alright, do they draw a thing? Okay. So I think we will cast a Sylvan Scrying here. We can make a 20/20 on the next turn if our opponent can't deal with it. Force of Negation is what they drew. Sure. So it should be noted that this matchup is not great because their deck is just full of bounce spells because they can't play regular interaction. They have to play stuff that's got the right mana cost for what they're trying to achieve. I think they want to play the Shardless Agent here because they can use Divine Outburst to pump their creatures on a combat step. Unless they're just keeping a blue card for Force of Will. Right, so we'll play this Bojuka Bog. If this was to come into play untapped land, we could try and combo this turn, but it's not, which is kind of awkward because we've got 3 mana here, but we need 4 mana to combo off if we don't have an Urborg or something. How important is our life total here? So a jam us for 8 and a jam us for 8 again, so our life total doesn't matter the most here because they're going to get us either way. Let's play this Pithing Needle and see if they'll crack their Wooded Foothills in response. Yes, they will. Okay. We're going to name Minsk and Boo in that case. So they're going to do an end of turn Violent Outburst. I think they just should have Shardless Agent and put 10 power into play because then the Violent Outburst on their turn gives them +3 damage. Instead of this way, they get nothing out of the Outburst other than just some Rhinos. If their hand has a Force of Will in it, then that play makes sense. If their hand has a Force of Will in it, there is no way we win this game. So we're going to get hit for 8 this turn. I don't think we can win this one, right? Because they will Shardless Agent. And then we have 4 bodies that we need to block. 3 of them. No, 2 of them. So I have 5 bodies and we need to block 3 of them. Alright. I really am not a fan of the Rhinos deck personally. It's just not how I like to play Magic. So we can kill our opponent on the next turn. They didn't play Shardless Agent last turn, which makes me think they have a Force of Will in hand. So I think we need to go for this now. So it's green mana, cast Crop Rotation here. Like, if they have counterspell, we just lose. 3 mana. This looks like a hard cast Force of Negation. That's why they didn't play the Shardless Agent. I suspect that might be the case, but there's nothing we can do to play around that there. Okay, so we need ways of protecting our creatures. Honestly, trying to tackle with Rhinos is just a lot of work here. They don't really give us enough time to do Life from the Loam stuff either. Pithing Needle on Minsk and Boo is fine, but not impressive. Let's just have a couple more discard spells and see if we can slow them down a bit. Although Pithing Needle does stop Colossal Sky Turtle if they're running it. Although I've seen some of the lists are kind of going off it a little bit. But let's have a Pithing Needle for that. Bojuka Bog, not so great here. Let's have another Pithing Needle. This is a matchup where they have actual factual Blood Moon rather than Magus, so we're not going to board in Sudden Shocks, but if we were playing green-black, we would board in Abrupt Decays here. Double Thoughtseize on turn 1 if we want it. Okay. We're just looking for one of our pieces to make this work as well. Let's Thoughtseize our opponent. They've kept 7. So what do they have here? A Brazen Borrower is annoying. We do have another Thoughtseize for that. So I think we take out a Violent Outburst and a Brazen Borrower. Do we need to take out the Brazen Borrower this turn? No, we do not. We're just buying ourselves some time here. There's a Misty. Alright, that's not ideal, is probably how I would describe that situation. We run out of Dark Depths here. Thoughtseize our opponent again. This time we take the Borrower. Then we play this on Minsk and Boo. Or is it Colossal Sky Turtle? Right, they're cracking this. We could also put it on... Oh no, we know they got a Wooded Foothills, but they've got ways of just getting other mana anyway, so I don't think this is where I want to be. Alright, so cycling the Lore Unrevealed, so we can't name it. I still think Minsk and Boo is a better name for us here. So we got a bunch of draws that win us the game. We've got 16 draws that give us a 20/20. What have they found here? Found a Shardless Agent maybe? Or they found a Blood Moon. Okay, they found a Violent Outburst. They're casting it now to dodge hand disruption. I really hate the way it does this on Magic Online, where the revealed hand and the revealed library are the same pile. So we know they've got a Murktide and a Trop. Let's just... let's see if they've boarded anything interesting. Did we see a Colossal Skytail in there? No Colossal Skytail, but they do have Otawara. Alright, one of our many draws that can give us a 2020. Please have one of those. Exploration. You are not one of those draws, are you? Let's just play this one out and pass the turn, I guess. We can start removing counters manually, but that's not going to win us the game, so I'm not going to bother clicking it. 16 cards out of 51. That's a pretty high chance of drawing it. But we do have to draw it this turn now, because Rhinos, pretty scary. Alright, 3 mana there, and they have a Blood Moon. Yep, we are dead. This matchup is real bad. So I played against this matchup at the Four Seasons just after the Eternal Legacy Masters. It was like the day after. And this matchup was brutal. Our opponent had like 4 Borrowers, Fire Ice to tap our guys down. They had the 2 Blood Moons as well. It was just a lot. This is a poor matchup for our deck for sure. Let's go to round 5. We're looking for the 2-3. On the play for the final round, we have a turn 2 2020, which we can follow up with a turn 3 2020. Right, let's play this in case we need to do some crop rotating. And we'll play this Urborg. Mishra's Bauble. So we're looking at a cast or a tempo deck. Flooded Strand. So we're looking at a tempo deck. No Wasteland is nice to see. There's a Ponder. This is a matchup that I generally like. So that's something for us at least. Quite what flavour of tempo deck, we don't know. Right, so I'm going to be drawing a bonus card here. A Thoughtseize. So the correct way to sequence this turn is to play the Hexmage around Daze. And then we can Thoughtseize our opponent to take out a piece of hate, or we can hold up for Sejiri Steppe. Both lines lose to Daze. Our opponents just off it. Excellent. They know, did they keep on top? They did not shuffle their library off the ponder, so they knew they were dead. All right. So, for this matchup, what would I like? Brazen Borrow is something our opponent can definitely mess us around with. So, things like Inquisition and Not of This World are relevant. Abrupt Decay is something that I don't mind in this matchup, but we don't have it, so we're not boarding it in. This is not really... Like, it's okay as a Life from the Loam matchup, but it's not really where I want to be. Life from the Loam is more for, like, control-y style decks. Bojuka Bog does do stuff, but it's not something we ever really want to be fetching in this matchup. So I'm going to... Like, it's okay if we naturally draw it. So that's what we're going for. More discard so we can punch through counter spells. A little bit more protection for our creature. Just more of, like, a standard turbo-y feel. The Boseijus rarely come out because they are part of our mana base. And we need to use... Oh, wow. We have the same hand again. Sure. Don't mind if I do. Would I rather Duress or Pithing Needle? That is the question here. I think Pithing Needle is better here. Oh, crap, they're Misty Rainforest. We are not naming that anyway. Like, we can take it a turn slower because our opponent doesn't clock us. Brainstorm, sure. And they're looking for a Daze to stop this. Or if they've got Wasteland in hand, seeing if they can get rid of them if they can't counterspell this, because they'll be dead cards. So they're just working with as much information as they can in response to this Needle. Wasteland gets named with Pithing Needle. Alright. Do we have choices about how we play this turn? We could just jam the Hexmage, or we can try a Duress. But we know our opponent's got 1 card on top of their library that we know what it is. So I think, that they know what it is. I think we're going to cast this into a Daze because we know we have the Thespian stage to follow up with. Alright, Thoughtseize pitching, a Force of Will pitching. What's it going to be? A Delver of Secrets, sure. If we played that Hexmage and it resolved, we would not make our guy unless they tapped out anyway. Seek the Beast. Sure. What are the cards they found? Delver of Secrets and a land. That seems pretty reasonable. Oh, sorry, no, it's just 2 lands, isn't it? Delver of Secrets was the thing they exiled. So they only get 1 card off this Seek the Beast. And they're just casting the Questing Druid. Not the most exciting. They have 4 cards in hand. We have a Thespian stage here. We can play out the Thespian stage. I would like to Duress our opponent. I would also like to Pithing Needle. Let's Duress first in case they've got some like Mince and Boo shenanigans in their hand. This does not take Brazen Borrower, importantly. Alright, a Brainstorm. Not a big fan of that one. Oh, they're just off it. They've brainstormed, they know what the top cards of their library are, so they know that we can make a 20/20 next turn, it'll kill them, and they're off it. The Delver matchup with our deck is great, which is one of the reasons I think it's not a bad shout in the meta. Alright, let's talk about the list today. We got kind of ruined by a high quality draw in 2 games from a Death Shadow deck. Normally Death Shadow I think is an alright matchup, but they did manage to draw their 1 or 2 out at 2 games in a row at the clutch time. And we had to mulligan quite a lot, so we didn't have a chance to protect ourselves. And that's just going to happen. We also lost to the Rhinos deck, which is a horrible matchup, so I'm not really a fan of that one. They have a great deal of tools that can stop us. The green-black build is slightly better against Rhinos because you can use their Blood Moons as a way of comboing with your own Abrupt Decays to blow up their Blood Moon and make your Dark Depths come back. It comes in with no counters if they have a Blood Moon in play, so you can kind of do that. But as for the list, what we'd like to talk about was how the thing... Oh, we also lost to Ouphe spells as well, right? Where we mulligan to 1. So I don't think our losses are necessarily on the list at all. I think, you know, those are just things that are going to happen. And in the regular course of playing Magic, if we'd have kept a hand that dealt with artifacts against the Ouphe spells deck instead, we would have been alright. But I felt we wanted to try and at least have a way of stopping their turn 1 kill. Because when they're on the play against basically a green-black deck that is relying on discard and stuff, I think generally they're going to want to have a turn 1 kill. So I mulliganed hard for that and was not rewarded. Anyway, so I don't think our losses are particularly worrying at all. As for our list, there was a game where we had a Gemstone Mine in play early on that gave us green mana, and there was a 1 in 8 chance that could have been a basic swamp in our previous build, in the sort of solid green-black build, and that would have been a disaster for us, and that could have lost us the game. So there's like a 1 in 8 chance that we just can't keep our opening hand. So in terms of reliability, there's an example where you can say, okay, so statistically our deck was, I'm not going to do the maths, but like 12% roughly, something like that, more reliable than if we didn't have the Rainbow Mana base. So yeah, maybe, although a lot of times maybe you're just going to have a fetch down there and go and get a Bayou and it'd be fine. But there is that chance where you don't have that. So I think that kind of illustrates what we're looking for here. It's not huge margins of improvement in terms of making it more reliable, but it is a non-zero amount. There was also a game where we had this Yavimaya, where if this was a City of Brass, like I suggested at the start, then we would have been in a much better position. So maybe next time I will try it with the City of Brass and have the 9 rainbow lands, which is normally the full amount of rainbow lands that you would see in a deck like this. Like a traditional Turbrodepths build. I still don't think we want any like non-green-black cards in the main deck. I think the main deck is very close to where I want to be. Depending on your meta, you can sort of change some of the cards around. So sometimes you'll want the other Not of This World in, the Life from the Loam out. Sometimes you'll want discard in. So basically, like the flex slots in this particular list, in my opinion, are probably the 2 Life from the Loams. Like the things that we're not... So we have our fast mana, so that's kind of done and dusted. Also, I think you do still want the Bojuka Bog main deck. I don't think you want to bury any of your things in the sideboard. But in terms of what you can actually change with this list, I think it's just a protection. So it's just this column of stuff here that you can tweak. So it's a case of, this is obviously our combos, this stays. This is our mana base, so this stays. This is our like tutors and fast mana. That's, you know, pretty standard. We have less fast mana than other builds because we have 3 expirations. And then it's a case of, are we happy with this disruption suite? This is what we're mainly changing depending on what we think. I think maybe next time I might consider moving a Loam to the board and having a Not of This World in the main. And I might try that. I think that's probably the next thing. And also the City of Brass. So I'm probably going to make 2 main deck changes next time I play this list and see how that fares. But I think the list was fine. Like, we certainly did our thing. When you keep a good 7-card hand with this deck, you feel like nigh on unbeatable. But when you mulligan to 1 card against an Oops the Spells deck, you feel a bit like a clown. And that's kind of the nature of these decks. What we're doing has an incredibly high ceiling. The floor is actually relatively high because we can always mulligan to a hand that makes a 20-20. That's what our deck is designed to do. The chances of us not hitting a way of making a 20-20 by turn 3 or 4 is very, very low. So, you know, we can do that, but whether or not making a 20-20 will win you a game is hard to say. Against Delver decks, quite often it will. Even against like the blue-black decks, most of the time that will be good enough, but then sometimes they'll get a wasteland that will ruin you, or sometimes they will draw into their like 1 outer of their borrower and get you. So there are margins that we play in, but that's Magic. The reason why Magic is so good is because there is variance. Not every game is the same. And sometimes that's on your side, sometimes on your opponent's. The secret is to play enough games that you can work out like the percentages and how your deck feels and then tweak it based on a large sample size, which is what I like to do. All right, I think we are done for today. So if you like this one, remember to like the video. It really helps the channel out. And subscribing doesn't cost you anything, helps me out too. Sharing my content and just playing Legacy yourself, really. The more people playing Legacy, the better. It's the best thing you can do. I believe this build that I'm playing today is like 180 ticks or something, 190 ticks on Magic Online, which is very cheap. And I think this deck is very competitive. And as you know, I love playing it. Check out the Patreon if you're interested. If you want to give me some money, by all means do that too. You could do it via YouTube or the Patreon. Obviously, you don't have to. My video content will always be free and none of it will be early access to people because I think it's important everyone is treated fairly and gets to see it that way. But if you've got money to spare and you want to help me out, by all means do so. Oh, another thing. I do have a guide to playing budget Green-Black Turbrodepths on my Patreon. It's on a free tier as well, so you can just go and have a look at that. You don't have to pay anything. You just come and have a look because putting a budget guide behind a paywall is kind of heinous to me, but there you go. So yeah, if you're interested in maybe getting a cheaper version of that, I think I got a build down to, I'm trying to think how low I got it. I can't remember now, but you could play a paper version of this deck that is competitive enough for a very cheap amount because it's not an expensive deck for the most part. All right, I'm done rambling away at the end of the video now, so I'm going to say once again, thank you very much for watching and goodbye.